Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm your host, Meghan Grebner, with us as always to talk all things markets. University of Missouri, Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Happy Friday, Megan.
Happy Friday from sunny Orlando. I was not sure what to do with that big ball of fire in the sky when I got here.
So we've seen good sun in Missouri for a change as well. So it's nice to be talking about 60 plus weather in good old Columbia, Missouri.
You know, you've got to enjoy it when you have it, I suppose.
Spring is here.
Spring, no, maybe not so much just yet. All right, today we're going to talk about the big cattle inventory report that came out earlier in the week. We'll talk restaurant performance and we'll take a quick look at the jobs numbers. But to kick things off, let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, on the cattle side this week, Megan, we saw live fed cattle that were $2.35 higher this week. That now puts them $19.60 over where they were a year ago at this time. Feeder cattle markets were strong this week, anywhere from $5 to $15 higher. On the future side, April live cattle futures were up 245, and the March feeder cattle contract was up $5.35. Megan, that has feeder cattle futures up $17.75 over the last 3 weeks. So some nice gain there after what was the slide in late 2023. Choice box beef prices were $4.15 lower this week. On the hog side, cash barrels and gilts were $2.60 higher this week. The April lean hog futures contract was up 60 cents. We did lose 60 cents on the pork cutout value. Loins, butts, and picnics down. So even strength in bellies couldn't lift that pork cutout value this week.
Really an impressive week, especially as we take a look at those feeder cattle prices. What do you think is helping to push? I mean, obviously short numbers, right? But what are some other things that might be helping to provide that kind of a support, looking at a $5 to $15 jump?
So I think there are three things we can talk about: short numbers, and short numbers. But all right, so to be a little less flippant in my response to you, I do think feed prices continue to move lower. I think that's been helpful to feeder cattle prices. However, I think feed yards generally are probably struggling finding any kind of profitability to be made on feeder cattle at this point in time. But I expect maybe lower feed costs ahead will also help push feeder cattle prices higher.
Now let's take a look at those weekly slaughter numbers. How are we stacking up for cattle and hogs?
Yeah, USDA tells us for the week ending February 3rd, a run of cattle of 637,000 head. That's 19,000 more than we did last week, but unchanged relative to a year ago. On the hog side, a good run here of 2.692 million head of hogs this week. That's 3,000 head more than we ended up with last week, and 102,000 above where we were a year ago at this time.
All right, we're still not at a point where we're talking year over year comparison. We'll get there shortly, and it'll be interesting to see how what trajectory beef and hog slaughter go as we get underway further into the year. Not cattle on feed numbers, cattle inventory numbers out earlier this week. And as you take a look at all of the cattle and calves on January 1, what is your takeaway from this report? I'm assuming not a lot of surprises.
So not a lot of surprises, confirmation, right? So I think as much as you and I talked about cow slaughter and heifers on feed, percentage of heifers on feed, you know, we certainly thought we were going to be lower on beef cows, and that came out of the report. Beef cows down 2.5% relative to a year ago, confirms that contraction. I guess if anything jumps out to me, Megan, you know, you look at intended beef replacement heifers greater than 500 pounds. That came in 98.6% of a year ago. That was below the midpoint of pre-report expectations. There were some estimates of that being higher than the previous year. So maybe that lends a little credibility to the idea that we're not really holding heifers back to build the herd at this point. I think there are some interesting state-by-state changes that we can talk about. Also say, though, that not to forget about some of the revisions. Total cattle and calves down 433,000 for January 1 of 2023. So they've moved that lower. Just I keep saying we just get tighter when we have those kinds of changes.
As you look at some of the regional areas or some of the maybe standout states, what jumps out at you? What areas are you watching most?
Yeah, so all right, so if we look at, so I think there's a couple ways to cut this. So if we look at states with at least 100,000 beef cows for a minute, and we look at the percentage declines, Wisconsin down 7.1, South Carolina down 6.9, Missouri down 5.9, Alabama down 5.9, Iowa down 4.7, Texas down 4.3. You kind of get those big ones that have declined. Now I'll say you look at the absolute changes. Texas down 185,000 head, Missouri down 116, Oklahoma down 69, Nebraska down 67, Kansas down 51. That's all dry weather. So certainly the drought affecting those states has been important to the reduction that we're seeing in beef cow inventory.
And I wouldn't imagine we're going to see anything expand or at least slow, come to a halt, stay at a more normal, stay steady. Hearing the cattle facts session this morning, the weather outlook, a very short-lived El Nino, and by the second half of the year starting to switch into a La Nina, which I would assume has a lot of people sighing and not in a good way.
Yeah, and you know, you look, all right, so we did have so Pennsylvania, big state of growth of 20,000 head of beef cows. So a few states talking about some growth, which again, I'll go, those are the outliers of maybe a little better weather than average. But I think you still have a lot of folks who are sitting on the sidelines waiting for forage supplies to replenish. That's both pasture as well as hay in the barn to make sure you can get by the next dry weather period. And if they don't get a chance to grow those supplies back, then I think the interest in growing the herd is going to continue to be slow to develop.
Any other notes from that cattle inventory report?
So I think the only other one, when you look at feeder cattle outside of feedlots, that January 1 number down significantly from the previous year. It just reminds me to say placements from calves here in the U.S. has to continue to fall as we get into 2024. We're going to get tighter. We seem to keep moving ahead or pulling ahead. I'll say you look back at 2023 placements, I think sometimes we move feeder cattle into yards sooner than we might have normally, just because some producers were trying to keep enough forage available to get the cows through the winter. So we could get to an incredibly tight period of time. Just so upside potential, even though we've talked about really high prices, but also I think the downside risk keeps happening on the demand side.
All right, let's talk a little demand. A restaurant performance index number out this week. Maybe not going the direction we would like it to be going.
Yeah, that's right. So down slightly, 0.3% in December. It wasn't off too much, but when you look at the current situation component of that index, customer traffic and labor are the two components of that were dragging the overall index lower. Expectations were also not so great. That really was driven by business conditions, and I think their higher interest rates certainly are the driver. And so we've been for the last several months in this right around 100, not big contraction, but also not big expansion, just sideways.
Jobs report out this week. A positive jobs report and a positive revision to December 2023, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we got lots of jobs. we were 353,000 jobs added in January. We kept unemployment at 3.7%. That really topped what was a pre-report average of 185,000 jobs pre the report. I will say we also then added in this to the December numbers relative to what we said back in December significantly. As we look, we were really talking about up 117,000 from where we originally saw the estimate in December. So strong growth. That certainly ought to be helpful on the demand side of the picture for meat products.
Wages, as we talk about job growth, that's obviously important, but we're still seeing retail prices that are a little bit higher and adding a little pressure to consumers. How is wage growth or wage rates? How are wage rates stacking up?
Yeah, so if you look at the January numbers, Megan, we did see wage rates, average hourly earnings up 19 cents, 0.6% relative to December. Over the past 12 months now, we're talking about average hourly earnings that are 4.5% higher over that period of the last 12 months.
Before we jump out of here today, we're going to talk a little bit about a new producer tool that's available through University of Missouri, the Feed Stuff Finder. Talk to me a little bit about its vision and the benefit that it's going to provide livestock producers.
Yeah, so we've been rolling this out as the, I'll say it's we call it the go-to platform for both suppliers of feedstuffs as well as livestock producers across the United States. It's really the idea of we want to connect those with feedstuffs for sale with livestock producers looking for those feedstuffs. It's wide ranging in terms of the products that are kept. I think our goal here is to really try to keep farmers' jobs easier by having the one-stop shop where they can go and look and see what different feedstuffs cost and to get landed to their farm.
The Feed Stuff Finder was developed by the University of Missouri Extension and funds provided by both the North Central Extension Risk Management Education Center and the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Scott, as you take a look at this tool and obviously with the extension mission, how does it help address challenges in feed sourcing for buyers, but then also on the seller side?
Yeah, so I think when we're in the middle of drought, it makes it maybe easier to find some of those higher quality feed ingredients, making sure there's reliable feedstuff sources available to livestock producers. So this idea of connecting, and hey, it's a fairly simple tool that's available. It's free for individuals to either find or to list hay or other feedstuffs they have for sale.
I love the intuitive mapping function that it has also in that connection element.
Yes, it really simplifies the process immensely, and again, I think the mission here is to make sure we're connecting buyers and sellers of feedstuffs in a way that makes their lives simpler to try to make those transactions happen, especially in a period of dry weather where you may have to go a lot further to find quality hay than normal, and I think this helps with that process.
Got if folks want to find out more information, what's the best way for them to do so?
So Megan, I think the easiest thing to tell them is if they Google Feedstuffs Finder, they will find that website. Feedstufffinder.org is the website, but I think they can just Google Feedstuffs Finder, and that's the easiest way to get there.
All right, that'll do it for us this week. As we look ahead to next week, farm income, supply and demand numbers, and monthly trade data. What are you watching for out of those reports?
Yeah, so we're for me, monthly trade data may be the biggest one, just to see how we start 2024. And we know in 2023 was certainly challenging for beef exports out of the United States. I may be watching beef imports as well, just given prices. I'm not going to be surprised for 2024 to potentially be a year of record beef imports into the United States. I'm also interested in watching farm income. USDA is going to give us another shot of their estimate for 2024. They're going to become more or less positive relative to their previous estimates. To me, that's important for kind of the financial picture of U.S. agriculture.
Scott, always great to see you. We'll talk to you next Friday.
Sounds good, Megan.
To have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning, go to brownfieldagnews.com. You can also submit questions, and for market updates, for commodity market updates daily, make sure to check out John Perkins' Market Minute. Have a great weekend. I'm Meghan Grebner for Brownfield.